Hello guys, welcome to my channel How to Learn. In this video, I want to explain about 4 functional interfaces in Java 8. Now let's start with the consumer interface. Consumer interface is an interface which accepts an input argument and do not returns any result. If you observe this consumer interface, you have a abstract method which do not return any result and accepts one input argument. It means we need to use this functional interface. I can say like we need to use this consumer interface when we have some requirement like we'll pass some argument and maybe some operation can be performed in the on this argument like printing this argument or adding some value and displaying it, whatever we need. But we are not expecting any result from it. Now let's try to implement consumer interface here. I hope you guys already watched my earlier videos about lambda expressions and functional interfaces. If not, please check my playlist. If you don't have idea about this lambda expressions and functional interfaces, I'm sure you cannot understand this tutorial. Okay, now let's try to pass some argument and let me try to print it here. Let me say implementation of consumer interface. Let me try to print some variable here. Okay, now I call this accept method from here. Let me pass some argument 100. Okay, now let me try to run the application. We'll get the result, right? It means here if you observe we are passing some argument and we are able to print some data also, but we are not able to expect any result because it is the nature of the consumer interface. It accepts argument but not return. Now let's try to understand how Java is using this consumer interface in its internal implementation. Okay, let me try to add some integers to this list as list 1, 2, 3, 4, and let me say is dot for each. I want to print the variables. I can say the elements in this list, so I'm just using this for each system.out.println. If we observe here in this for each loop, what is the input argument? They're expecting a consumer interface, right? It means this for each loop is using consumer interface as internal implementation. You can also observe it here, right? This action is calling this accept method, right? It means now we can clearly understand where Java is using the consumer interface as internal implementation. Actually, it is the one of the mostly asked interview questions, guys, where this consumer interface is. Now let's try to understand what is a predicate interface. Actually, this predicate interface, it accepts an input argument and evaluate that. Based on the evaluation result, it will return a boolean result. Okay, now let's try to understand it better by implementing with an example. Let me say predicate string predicate equal to, I'm implementing this function interface using the lambda expression, guys. Okay, here let me say str and add a semicolon here. Let me say str, okay, sorry, let me add the return statement str dot length greater than 3. Okay, now let me try to test this predicate whether it is working out fine or not. Let me say predicate dot test. Here we need to pass some string, right? Let me say hi. Now I will get the result false as our condition is not met. Let me check. Here we are getting the result as false, right? Let me say hello and let me run the application. I will get the result true as our condition is met. Now actually we'll use this predicate when we have let's assume there is some voter class, voter service. There we need to check whether the particular person having age is greater than 18 or not, and here we have multiple methods, and in every method we need to check for the particular condition. There is no need to write the same condition again and again, right? We can simply declare and predicate and we can use it there. Now let's try to understand where Java is using this predicate interface internally. Now we have a list of numbers, right? Let me try to filter this based on some condition. How we can evaluate a condition here? If you observe this filter intermediate operation, it is expecting as a predicate interface as input argument, right? It means we are using this filter this predicate interface in the filter intermediate operation in the streams. Now let me try to write a condition like I want to print only even numbers here. Let me say system dot out print ln. Okay, let me try to rerun the application here. So we're getting the result, right? Our result is 214. It means now we got some idea about the consumer and predicate interfaces, right? We are using consumer interface in for each, and if it's come to this predicate, it's being used in the filter. Now let's try to understand what is the supplier interface. Actually, the supplier interface is nothing but it will just return a result. It will not expect any input argument. If you observe consumer interface or predicate, it is expecting some input argument, right? But here it will not expect any input argument. It will just return some result. Now let's try to implement this supplier interface here. Let me say supplier of string supplier. Now we are implementing it using our lambda expression. Now let me try to return some result. Let me say hello world. Okay, now let me try to print some result here. Supplier dot get, we have the get method here, right? Let me try to run the application. We'll get the result as hello world. Now we may get it out. If it is returning some static result, where we can use it? Actually, it is used in cases like we need some static value or some kind of static error messages. You can use the supplier interface at that places. Now let me explain some scenario here. Let's assume we have a list which is empty. Okay, let me say list equal to new array list, and let me try to import this. Let me try to get first element from this list. But will we get any element from the list? No, because it is empty, right? So what we can do, we can simply say else get supplier. Here what I'll do, I'll just return some result. New, let me return 1. Okay, now what we can do, let me try to print the result here in this sysout. Let's try to rerun the application. Now we are getting the result as 1. So let's see what happens if we don't have this else get. See, here it's saying it is empty, right? It means if we are not getting any result, then we can use this supplier interface as a backup. I can say it's a kind of error message also. Okay, let me convert this list into string, and let me say here list is empty. It's a kind of warning message like the list we are trying to access is empty, right? Now I hope you guys got some idea how this supplier interface is useful. Now let's try to understand what is function interface. This function interface expects some input argument and also returns some result. Now let's try to implement it here. Here, as I said, it is expect some input argument. Here we need to specify the types. Okay, now let me try to implement it using lambda expression. I will perform some operation on this input argument. Here let me try to pass the input argument, and now let's try to test it. Let me pass function dot test, function dot apply 9. So we'll get the result 9. Okay, now we may get at where we are using this function interface. Actually, if you observe this snippet, we are trying to sort a list of string based on its length, right? Here in this comparing method, we are expecting input argument as a function interface, right? Now I hope you guys got some idea where we are using this function interface. And if you guys like my video, please like and subscribe to my channel.